Hey people, this is a look at a chandelier, I guess you'd call it, a piece that is nearly done. I just hung it and plugged it in for the first time. Before I go there, I just wanted to give a little insight, at least from my perspective, on building steampunk, or actually just about anything else. As you can see, this is the way my workbench always is. I don't have enough space for everything that I have. I don't have expensive tools. But one thing I do have, and I don't know how you could proceed without it, I have stuff. I go to transmission shops, dumpsters from steel manufacturers, friends give me things, and I take things apart, keep the parts that I like, and you end up with a real nasty cluttered workshop, which I don't mind. This is a light. Whenever you're speaking of steampunk, you are essentially saying Victorian. The two kind of intertwine in a lot of areas. Things like this, I call them flourishes, from even up to the 30s Art Deco. They had form and function, they had style and beauty, and they did their job. These kind of pieces usually are a lot of filigree, they're ornate. Now this corner bracket is actually brand new, probably $4, cast iron, and very likely made in China. Most of the stuff I use is actually from 100 years ago or so. A lot of the pieces are broken and no longer needed. Now, just to go over, when I started this light, and I worked on this for an hour here and there, a space when I had time, but you have to begin somewhere. Now, I go to secondhand stores, again, gathering junk, and I take things apart and keep the little pieces, keep all the gears. I put out almost no money. For glass, I use the tempered glass radius tops from pots and pans. Lighting pieces, globes, glass, stone, transmission parts. This is a pressure plate from a small truck. And in this instance, this is what I used as the centerpiece. It's just a piece of hardened steel, but as you see, everything is symmetric. There's kind of a beauty to me in how perfectly everything is cut and formed. And this is a different one, but I started using that for something. Now I collect, because of the Victorian era, using so much cast iron. I get anything I can. This piece right here was a made in China. I paid $5 for it. It was a Christmas tree stand. Nobody wanted it, even though it wasn't broken. But as you can see, it's got a lot of design and filigree in it. And it basically had 4 legs like this. And it's dirty and rusty. But that's what I got 2 of these, and I thought I would put those on either side of my centerpiece. And I wanted it to have some depth, so those pieces rolled down, and then I was left with empty space on either side here. And it was a first for me. This kind of globe material, and I'm still not sure what it is, it cuts very easily. In fact, you can even sand it. There's just a little bit of a cut. But a simple cut-off wheel is what I use mostly for everything. But it cut real easy. I just drew the lines, the shapes I wanted, and ground it a little bit. And that was new and unique. And light, this was off of a globe. Light passes through here. It's opaque, so it's not bright, but it still sends the light through. So that gave me the basic design, and I keep things like pieces of lamps. This had an LED, 6 LED sets in it with a circuit board for use, plugging in 120 volts in the wall, and gave it a lot of light, weighed nothing, and was very small. Also probably give you 100,000 hours worth of use. And when you make a light, a chandelier, you want it to last a little while. So I always try to use LEDs when I can. Now, when you start accentuating things like this, that's steel, but it's beautiful, and it can be beautiful if it's done right. I keep cast brass pieces also. That is Oriental, and I did indeed cut a little bit off of here to put on the ends of the both the lights and the cast iron parts, just to accentuate it. And sometimes I have drawers, and to me this is the key. My friend calls this junk, and I suppose it is, but everything that's brass people dispose of, don't want, or I have friends with transmission shops who just let me dig through. But I have washers, nuts, bolts, everything you can think of. These are glass parts, lights. And for me, I look at a part, these are very strange, and I get inspired, and I picture a design, and every once in a while I have to Google it and punch up some designs. And in this case I did that too. This too is a piece. This is made up of like Chinese cast iron, cheap but beautiful. And that is, this thing is actually colorful and beautiful. It's just been hanging in the dust so long. And that top half right there, that is a part of a C-clamp. And there are steel flowers on it. And this hangs from a beautiful rail, and a barn door is bolted to that, 2 of these, and it rolls on those brass balls back and forth. And that also is a piece that will be done here real soon. But anyway, back at hand, as you can see all around the shop, there are pieces that were begun and just never quite finished. Some of them are waiting for something else or another part, or even knowledge and skill. I have wire, strange cotton wound wire, braided, copper coated. It's from the 1940s. Half a roll somebody throws out, but it dates back, and it really does lend a look to the piece. Anyway, I plugged the light in, and I used glass in there, and I'm afraid it might not be bright enough. And but here is our light. Now, after this is done a while, you get to know the design, the styles, everything from a couple of eras, probably reaching over about 50 years, from early Victorian and Edwardian and into the Art Deco era. And if this were new, I wouldn't have anything to do with it because it's gaudy. But you go back in time and look at how Victorian things were made, and it fits exactly. Now, it is elegant. If you look at pieces back then, they were often overdone, I would say. But you see, that's a pressure plate, an automotive part from a clutch that is cut. I don't think we can see it, but I cut them into leaves, and it is a bronze color, but just at the end of the leaves it fades nicely into green. There's the cast iron, and I cut some of it out for weight and for a little more design. And then there's some brass feet that I changed the look of, but put on either end. And then of course here is the stone, or it's not glass, from those globes I cut into panels and figured out how to get together, and that's a first for me, so I will perfect that. And then to match the brass feet, I cut some brass out of that oriental piece and just polished it and put there so it went together. And up on top are actually from the era of gas lighting inside of homes. They pivoted off the wall, and that is 2 of them welded back to back. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the finish and the color on that. But the light goes together as a whole. It probably doesn't fit in this dirty garage. But I believe it can be beautiful, and it is safe, and with the LED lighting there's no heat, and probably lasts years and years. So I will turn that light off and see if I can't yeah, there is glass up in there, some filigree, and it's a 2-tone finish. It's all little brushes and spray paints, but you see how it glows. Now that's the first time I hung it and tested it out, and now we'll just do the fine detail, the little bit of work, and we'll take it down and put it up for sale. Well, to sum it up, without the items, the products, you can't construct anything. And obviously without some imagination and a little bit of skill in a few areas, you can't do anything. But you don't have to have expensive tools, a huge workplace. So if it's in your head and your hands can bring it into being, that is all you need.